Imagine you just walk up to a total stranger on the street, stand right in front of them, and just shout, 2 p.m.
Right, they would look at you like you had completely lost your mind.
Exactly. But if you walk up, establish eye contact, say, excuse me, and then wait for them to pause and say, yes.
And then you ask, could you tell me the time?
Yeah, the whole interaction works perfectly. I mean, they check their watch, they tell you it's 2 o'clock, and you both go on with your day. We basically take these invisible social rules completely for granted.
Oh, totally. But without them, human communication just breaks down into total chaos.
It really does. And that reality is basically the perfect jumping off point for our mission today. So welcome to this deep dive. Today, we're focusing on one highly specific, really targeted goal.
We are treating this like an elite mentoring session designed just for you.
Exactly. Our mission is to completely demystify Tutorial 2, which is protocol architecture, from the Data Communication Networks module. And I want to set the tone right now. Even if you have absolutely zero background in computer science.
Like you've never looked at a line of code in your life.
Right. This is going to make complete sense. By the end of this session, you're going to understand the core, invisible architecture of the internet. And you'll know exactly how to approach these specific exam questions with total confidence.
I think that's such a crucial mindset to start with. Because network architecture can look incredibly intimidating at first glance, mostly because of all the acronyms.
Oh yeah, the acronyms are endless.
Right. But it's actually built on very logical, highly organized foundations. So before we look at the specific tutorial questions, we need to lay down the big picture from your lecture notes.
Okay, so what's the fundamental concept backing everything we're about to discuss?
It's the TCP/IP protocol stack.
Yeah.
You see, the internet is simply too massively complex for one giant piece of software to handle. So computer scientists did what they always do. They broke the massive problem down into smaller, manageable layers.
5 distinct layers, to be exact.
That's
Let's lay out what those 5 layers are before we do anything else.
Good idea.
So at the very top, closest to you, the user, is the application layer. Below that is the transport layer, then the network layer, then the link layer, and finally at the very bottom, the physical layer.
Precisely. And the best way to understand how your data actually moves through these 5 layers is a process called encapsulation.
Encapsulation, right?
Yeah. The lecture notes use a really brilliant visual analogy for this. They use Matryoshka dolls.
Oh, like those wooden Russian stacking dolls, where a smaller doll sits inside a slightly larger one.
Exactly those. When your web browser or email app wants to send data, it creates the smallest, innermost doll. That happens at the application layer.
Makes sense.
Then it hands that data down to the transport layer, which takes that small doll and places it securely inside a slightly larger transport doll.
And that process just keeps repeating as we go down the stack, right?
That's like sure.
The network layer takes the transport doll, puts it into a bigger network doll.
Yep, you got it.
Then the link layer puts it into an even bigger link doll until it finally hits the physical layer at the bottom. And that's where that biggest doll gets shipped across a copper wire or like a Wi-Fi radio wave.
Right, as raw electrical signals are light. It's really just putting data inside slightly larger containers at each step, adding a little bit more shipping information every single time.
Which is exactly what encapsulation is. You're just packaging the data for its journey.
Precisely.
Okay, so with that foundation of layered Matryoshka dolls clearly in our minds, let's get tactical. The tutorial asks us to actually apply this theory. We're going to tackle these questions one by one.
Let's do it.
All right, let's dive right in. Let's move on to question number 1. The question says, show how data goes between the application layer in host A and application layer in host B via various layers in the intermediate devices APR and MC.
Okay, so let's do some source tracing here. If you're following along in your study material and want to know where this originates, this question maps directly to the Layered Internet Protocol Stack section in your lecture notes.
Oh, right, the part with the diagrams.
Exactly. Specifically, you want to visualize the encapsulation slides that show the physical U-shaped path that data takes as it travels through intermediate devices, things like network switches and routers.
Now, for exam strategy on this one, when you're actually sitting in the exam hall, there is a very specific strategy for drawing this to ensure you get full marks.
Yes, this is where students often trip up.
Right. You have to start by drawing all 5 layers stacked up for host A on the far left of your page, and all 5 layers stacked up for host B on the far right.
But the trap that catches so many students is how they draw the intermediate devices in the middle.
Yeah, because the question lists 3 items in the middle, right? An access point, or AP, a router, R, and a media converter, MC.
And this is where the exam tests your core understanding, because those intermediate devices do not have all 5 layers. The exam question explicitly provides this context.
Right, they're not full computers.
Exactly. The access point only possesses the 2 lowest layers, the physical layer and the link layer. The router is a bit smarter, so it has 3. Physical, link, and network. And the media converter is the simplest of all. It only operates at the physical layer.
So your drawing basically cannot just be a straight, flat line shooting horizontally from host A to host B. It needs to look like a specific, like a roller coaster track.
A roller coaster track is a great way to picture it.
So the data goes down all 5 layers at host A. It travels out across the wireless link, then it goes UP to layer 2 at the access point before going back down to layer 1.
Right.
Then it travels across the copper cable, goes UP to layer 3 at the router, and back down to layer 1. It shoots across a fiber optic cable, goes straight through the media converter single layer 1, travels across the final copper cable, and finally goes UP all 5 layers at host B where it's fully unpacked.
So it's a series of distinct U-shapes. But to really ace this material, we need to take a PhD-level deep dive into the why. Like, why on earth do these different boxes have different numbers of layers?
That's a really good question. Why not just give them all 5?
Well, let's connect this back to the real world. A media converter's only job in the entire world is to change light signals coming from a fiber optic cable into electrical signals on a copper wire. It doesn't need to think.
It doesn't read addresses or anything?
No, not at all. It's just a raw conversion tool, so it only needs to operate at layer 1, the physical layer. A router, on the other hand, has a much more complex job. It actually has to read the IP address on the packet to decide where in the world to send it next.
Ah, and IP address is live at layer 3, the network layer.
Logically, yeah. So the router needs layers 1, 2, and 3 to open the package just enough to read that IP address.
I love that. Let me bring in the office analogy from the lectures because I think this makes the mechanics so relatable. Think of host A and host B as 2 highly specialized engineers. They represent our application layer.
Okay, I'm with you.
The engineer at host A hands a highly technical, really complex message to their secretary, who acts as the transport and network layers. The secretary organizes it, puts it in an envelope, writes the destination address on it, and hands it to the office assistant.
And the assistant is the link in physical layers.
Right. The assistant actually carries it down to the mailroom.
I love that analogy. And if we extend it, the intermediate devices are basically the postal system itself. The media converter is essentially just the guy driving the mail truck.
He doesn't care what's inside the letters.
Exactly. He doesn't read them. He just physically moves the bulk weight from point A to point B. That is pure layer 1. The local post office, however, represents our router. The postal workers there actually have to look at the zip code on the envelope, which is layer 3, to know which city to route it to next.
But crucially, the post office never opens the envelope to read the engineer's actual message.
Right, they just need the zip code.
That perfectly explains why the router doesn't have an application layer. It doesn't need one to do its job.
Exactly. It opens the package just enough to read the address and then sends it on its way.
Okay, so now that we've mapped out this roller coaster path for the devices, we have to look at the logical journey the data takes, which leads us directly to question number 2.
Let's hear it.
Okay, let's move on to question number 2. It asks, based on your answers to part 1 above, identify the number of hops between A and B at each layer. For each hop, identify the peer layers at the 2 ends. For A, application layer, B, transport layer, C, network layer, D, link layer, and E, physical layer.
Awesome. So for the source tracing on this one, you'll find the underlying theory on the PDUs and peers slide in your lecture notes.
POs and peers.
Yeah. This section demonstrates how peer layers, meaning the same layer on 2 different devices, communicate logically with each other. And they do this using something called protocol data units, or PDUs.
Just to clarify for everyone, a PDU is basically just the formal name for the Matryoshka doll at each specific layer, right?
Exactly. It's just what the data package is called at that exact moment in time. The application layers exchange PDUs called messages.
Okay.
The transport layers exchange segments. The network layer uses datagrams. The link layer uses frames. And the physical layer just deals with raw bits.
Okay, so for the exam strategy on this question, there is a very reliable, foolproof method for counting these hops. A hop is simply a horizontal logical connection between 2 devices at the exact same layer.
That's the key right there.
So you literally just look at the U-shaped drawing you just made for question 1, and you simply count the horizontal bridges between the devices that share a layer.
So let's run down the list, starting at the very top. The application and transport layers only exist at the two ultimate endpoints, host A and host B. Nothing in the middle has them.
So for both the application layer and the transport layer, there's only one hop directly from A to B.
Correct. Now, moving down to the network layer. We know from our drawing that host A has a network layer, the router R has it, and host B has it. So we just count the gaps.
That's two hops. One hop from host A to the router, and a second hop from the router to host B.
Perfect. Now the link layer. Our drawing shows this exists at host A, the access point, the router, and host B. Count the bridges between them. A to AP is 1, AP to router is 2, and router to B is 3.
Okay, so that's 3 hops for the link layer.
Yep. And finally, the physical layer. This is the actual physical medium touching every single device in the chain. Host A to the access point to the router, router to the media converter, and media converter to host B.
That gives us 4 physical hops.
Exactly. Which brings us to the deeper mechanics of what's actually happening here. This idea of counting hops raises a conceptual issue that usually confuses a lot of beginners when they first look at a network diagram.
Wait, hang on. I'm actually looking at this, and if the physical data, like the actual electricity and photons, has to take 4 separate jumps across different cables and devices, how can the application layer only be taking 1 hop? I mean, isn't it all the exact same piece of data moving across the network?
That is the perfect question to ask, and it really gets to the absolute core of logical versus physical connection.
Okay, break it down for me.
Let's step back and use a real-world equivalent for our deep dive. Think of a CEO of a major company who represents our application layer, calling the CEO of a different company on the phone. To those two CEOs, they're having one direct, continuous conversation. As far as their brains are concerned, it is a one-hop logical connection.
Right, they're just talking directly to each other, peer-to-peer.
Exactly. But let's look at the physical reality of that phone call. That CEO's voice is leaving their smartphone, bouncing through the air to a local cell tower. That's our access point.
And
Then the cell tower routes that signal to a regional telecom hub, our router.
wow, okay.
Then the signal shoots through a massive undersea fiber optic cable, our media converter, before it finally reaches the other CEO's phone on another continent. That is 4 physical hops.
That's crazy when you think about it.
But the CEOs do not care about the cell towers or the undersea cables. They don't even know they exist. The application layer only cares about the logical one-hop conversation with its peer. It completely ignores all the complex physical relays happening beneath it.
That is fascinating. The layers act completely independently of one another. They just trust that the layer below them will handle all the messy logistics.
Precisely.
Okay, we are making incredible time, and we've got a really great foundation. Let's move to the final, most math-heavy part of the tutorial.
Bring on the math.
Let's move on to question number 3. It reads, an application layer message M sent by B to A has a size of 1200 bytes. Transport header is 20 bytes. Network header is 20 bytes. Wired link adds 14-byte header plus a 4-byte trailer. Wireless link adds 24-byte header plus a 4-byte trailer. Determine the sizes of the PDUs for A, segment S, B, datagram D, C, link layer frame and links 3 and 4, D, link layer frame and link 2, and E, link layer frame and link 1.
Okay, a lot of numbers there. For source tracing, this is a direct, practical application of the encapsulation and de-encapsulation slides from the lectures.
Back to the dolls.
Exactly. Remember our Matryoshka dolls. Every time data moves down a layer, that specific layer adds its own tracking information, called a header, and sometimes a trailer to form a new, larger package. So the message becomes a segment, which becomes a datagram, which becomes a frame.
So let's talk exam strategy for this one. Listen closely, because this is where a lot of easy marks are lost in the panic of an exam. The mathematical methodology here is simple cumulative addition. But the massive trap is that you must build your math on the previous layer's total.
Not just keeping adding isolated numbers back to the original 1200 bytes.
Exactly. You have to remember you are putting the doll inside the bigger doll.
Let's walk through the math very deliberately. Part A asks for the size of segment S, which is at the transport layer. You take the original 1200-byte message and add the 20-byte transport header. That gives you a total of 1220 bytes.
Simple enough. Part B asks for datagram D at the network layer. You take the 20-byte segment you just calculated, and you add the 20-byte network header. That gives you 1240 bytes.
And again, the trap is going back to 1200. Always use the previous total.
Right. Moving on to part C and D, which ask for the link layer frames on the wired links. Take your current 1240-byte datagram. The question explicitly states that wired links add a 14-byte header A and D, a 4-byte trailer. So 1240 plus 14 plus 4 equals 1,258 bytes.
And I just want to highlight another trap right there. Do not forget to add that 4-byte trailer. The link layer is unique because it wraps the beta on both ends, front and back, usually for error checking purposes.
Oh, that's a good tip. Finally, Part E asks for the frame in link 1, which the diagram tells us is the wireless Wi-Fi link. We take our 1240-byte datagram again, but this time the wireless link adds a much larger 24-byte header and a 4-byte trailer. So 1240 plus 24 plus 4 equals 1,268 bytes.
The math itself is really straightforward, but the deep dive question we really need to ask is about the why. Like, why do these sizes change depending on the medium?
Yeah, why on earth does a wireless Wi-Fi connection need a 24-byte header while a wired connection only needs 14 bytes? What exactly is taking up those extra 10 bytes?
Because the physical reality of Wi-Fi is incredibly messy. It's shared, super chaotic airspace. What do you mean?
Think about it. If you have a copper wire physically plugged into your computer, that wire belongs entirely to you. You can send data whenever you want. But in the air, everyone's devices are shouting at the exact same time. The lecture notes actually detail this when discussing the 4-frame exchange in Wi-Fi scenario.
Oh, right.
Wireless devices have to use protocols to politely manage this chaos. They use RTS, which is request to send, and CTS, clear to send.
So it's not just sending the data, it's actually actively negotiating for permission to speak.
Precisely.
Yeah.
A device literally has to send the signal saying, hey, is anyone else talking right now? I'd really like to send some data.
Yep.
And then it has to wait for the access point to reply, the air is clear, go ahead.
And the lecture notes mention that it also has to wait for a specific mandatory time period, right? The DIFS?
Yes, the DIFS. That stands for DCF interframe space. It's basically a mandatory waiting period of pure silence just to ensure no one else is currently transmitting and about to collide with your data.
Wow, so there's a lot going on behind the scenes.
Because of all this complex negotiation, that wireless header needs to carry a lot more control information. It needs to specify transmission duration time so other devices know exactly how long they need to keep quiet. It needs extra address fields to manage the messy radio environment. A simple copper wire doesn't need any of that traffic control, so his header is much leaner.
Let's bring back the Matryoshka doll analogy to really cement this idea before we wrap up. Your original 1,200-byte message is the smallest, most precious wooden doll. You put it inside the transport doll, which adds, let's say, 20 grams of weight.
Okay, I like where this is going.
You put that into the network doll, adding another 20 grams. When it travels via the highly controlled regular mail system, which is our wired link, it goes in a standard lightweight cardboard box, adding 18 grams.
Right, because it's safe.
Exactly. But when it has to travel via a bumpy, totally chaotic airplane drop, which is the wireless Wi-Fi link, that standard cardboard box isn't going to survive. It needs a heavy-duty padded crate with extra warning labels on the outside to handle the chaotic environment. And that padded crate adds 28 grams.
That is such a wonderful way to visualize it. The physical environment the data is traveling through directly dictates how heavy-duty the packaging needs to be.
Well, we did it. We took a highly technical university-level computer science tutorial, and we cracked the whole thing wide open. If you are listening to this right now, you should feel incredibly proud of the foundation you've just built.
You really should. You now understand concepts that regularly trip up students who have been studying this for months.
And what's really amazing to me is how relevant this is to your everyday life. Literally right now, as you're streaming this audio, your device is performing this exact Matryoshka math. Millions of tiny digital dolls are being packed, shipped across routers and undersea fiber optic cables, and unpacked perfectly in milliseconds just so you can hear our voices. You now understand the invisible architecture that runs the modern world.
It truly is a modern marvel when you stop and think about the sheer scale and speed of it all. But I do want to leave you with one final thought to ponder, to keep that curiosity going.
Ooh, what is it?
Today, we calculated the perfect path and the perfect math for data packets that arrive safely. But your lecture notes briefly mention something called timeouts. What happens when one of those Matryoshka dolls gets dropped on the floor in a messy, chaotic Wi-Fi airspace or gets destroyed by a faulty router?
Oh man, that sounds like a nightmare to fix.
It is. How does the transport layer at the receiving end even realize a specific doll is missing in the first place? And more importantly, how does it organize a search party to resend that specific missing data without clogging up the entire global network in the process?
Oh, that is the beautiful, organized chaos of network reliability. But that is a deep dive for another day. Keep questioning how the digital world works around you. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.